This game, played in Budapest in 1997, is against a very talented Hungarian player named Peter Acs, whose reputation precedes him in a similar manner to Tate's. He's a wild attacker, but a little positionally unsound. A good strategy against such players is to guide play into a position where the eccentric player will have to force things to reach a situation that is consistent with his style. Then the truth of the position will be working against him. Of course, you have to be clear-headed to take advantage of these types of situations, and this is easier said than done. I have the white pieces here, and the opening was an Italian game, which is a gradual, slow positional game. I described to you why I entered into this type of thing, because I knew it went against his style. His last move was knight f6 to h5. His plan is knight f4. I played d4, which solidifies my advantage. I have a small edge. He played knight h to f4. Already, this was a critical moment. By playing these last two moves, he made a concrete decision. How do I challenge him? I played the very good move bishop takes f4. In some ways this might seem strange, because in this type of game, bishop is very strong, and bishops tend to be a little better than knights. But my decision is based upon the knowledge that he's kind of put into a bind here. If he plays e takes f4, then I have a positional advantage. My pawns on c3 and d4 combine to lock his dark square bishop out of the game. And I can play something like e5 here, offering a trade of pawns. After d takes e5, knight takes e5, we reach a typical kind of structure where I have a queenside pawn majority, and his double f-pawns don't really do all that much. White is better here, and I can hopefully convert this in an endgame. But perhaps most importantly, the position after e takes f4 would be stylistically very uncomfortable for my opponent, because he'd be slightly worse in a long, drawn-out endgame. He'd feel stifled. It would drive him crazy. He predictably played knight takes f4, entering into a long sacrificial variation, which of course I had looked at. So his style is shown, and now the wildness is about to set in. What would you do with white now? I'm sure you see that he sacrificed his e5 pawn. Should I take it? Once again, here I took the bull by the horns, and I did it. D takes e5. His idea, as I'm sure you see, was bishop takes h3. A piece sacrifice, busting open my king side and going after me. I had made the judgment when I played bishop takes f4 that this sacrifice wasn't really good for black, and so I used his aggression against him. Of course, this is in marked contrast to the games against Tate, where his little hints of aggression threw me off a little bit, and this one I was much more level-headed. My opponent's aggression was used against him. I fed off of it. G takes h3, knight takes h3. How would you handle this for white? What would your next two moves be? I'm sure you've heard the principle, when attacked in the side, respond in the center. King g2. After he played knight takes f2, attacking my queen, what would you do now? Queen d5, a very strong, classical, central move. All my pieces are prepared to cover up my king. Knight g3 can come whenever I want to. If he takes back on e5, then I can trade queens and take that pawn on e5. Of course, black doesn't want to trade queens after sacrificing a piece. After queen d5, he played queen c8, trying to worm his queen in. If he has the chance, queen h3 check will be decisive. What do you play with white? Once again, keep to the principles. Respond in the center. I played the very strong e6. He played a little bit of an offbeat attack. I've responded classically, and black's game is being challenged. After e6, I'm threatening e takes f7 with check. Of course, he can't take my pawn, or else I'd take back with my queen and force the trade of queens. He doesn't want that. He plays king h8. You can see that in this position what I'm doing is, because he has to prove something, because I'm up material, I'm forcing him to make bigger and bigger concessions to avoid trades. Here I played knight g5, a hint of an attack of my own. Because of my aggression, he's forced to offer the trade of queens himself. F takes e6, queen takes e6. The threat of knight f7 check is very powerful. But do you see my real threat? If it were your move with white, what would you do? Do you see mate in 2? I can force the smothered mate. Queen g8 check. And after rook takes, knight f7 will be mate. He had to trade queens. Queen takes e6, knight takes e6. So now he has 2 pawns for the piece, but he still has a little bit of initiative. Let's see how I stopped it. Rook f6, and I played rook e2. I wouldn't want to be too materialistic here. If I play knight takes c7, trying to win yet another pawn, then he can get a bit of an initiative after rook g6 check, knight g3, and rook f8. Now all of his pieces are taking place in the counterplay. If I play knight e6, I'll play rook f to f6. He could stir up some trouble here, maybe h5, h4 later. You don't want to be greedy in these types of situations. I can't go off running around taking pawns wherever I can. I have to solidify. Rook e2 is a good move, pressuring the f2 knight. He played rook e8, and only after he forced me to it. Then I took on c7. Knight takes c7, and now he played rook e5. Of course, rook takes e4 would be self-destructive because it would be trading off pieces when you're behind. Also tactically, after rook takes e4, knight takes e4, rook e1, he runs into trouble. His knight can't move because of a back-ranked mate. He played rook e5. I covered up my king with knight g3. Rook g5. His threat is rook g6. I played knight e6, attacking the rook. Rook g4. And now I began to solidify. Knight d4, blocking his bishop out of the attack. Very level-headed defense. I've handled his initiative very well in this game. I've let him force me into taking the pawn. Then I retreated, blocked off his bishop. I'm cutting back his pieces one by one until he'll be attacking with virtually nothing. Knight d3 he played. He's threatening knight f4 check, so I played rook d2, got out of the way. And knight e5, rook f2, offering a trade. Now he's forced to play rook takes f2, and after king takes f2, we can see that all of black's hopes of an attack have disappeared. I'm up a piece for a pawn, and I went on to win the game pretty easily. Again, you can look at the end of this one if you want to in the database. White is clearly winning. So you see, in this game and the first one against Steinhoff that I showed you, I responded in a very clear-headed, quiet manner to my opponent's attack, and it was no problem. I just calculated, worked out that it was no good, and responded. In the two games against Tate, on the other hand, I reacted emotionally, and I allowed him to stir up an attack out of nothing. Usually when you play an eccentric player, like the guys who I had these last 4 games against, they're going to try to make something, even if there's no chance. So let them do it, and take advantage of their forcing the position. Chess can't be manhandled. In almost every game, there's a truth of the position that runs through. So if your opponent tries to sacrifice material when he shouldn't do it, then you can take advantage of that and win the game. If you can keep poise under fire, you'll be able to solve the problems your opponent puts before you without any problem. But more than that, think about what it is that throws you off, and shore up that weakness. It may not be attack, it might be positional games that you don't like. It may be crazy games that you don't like. It might be end games, might be middle games, might be openings that you don't know what to do. Whatever makes you uneasy in chess, take it on. Make your weaknesses into strengths. That introspective process is what chess is all about.